close your eyes. Open your mind and drift with me into the night. The air is heavy tonight. A low fog clings to the riverside, and the moon, half veiled, lays a pale path of light across the moving water. The world feels still, hushed, as if waiting for something. Listen carefully, and you may hear it, faint at first, almost mistaken for the wind. A sound carried across the night, trembling with sorrow. A woman's cry. Ay, mis hijos. Oh, my children. The voice is both near and impossibly far, echoing through reeds and ripples, stirring the imagination of anyone who hears it. For centuries, travelers, villagers, and restless children alike have whispered her name, La Llorona, the weeping woman. Her story is not one, but many. It is told by firelight in Mexican villages, murmured in Spanish-speaking households across the Americas, and carried into modern cities where rivers still flow. And yet, however it is told, it begins with tragedy. They say she was once a woman of striking beauty. Some call her Maria, a girl born into humble means, but so radiant that she caught the eye of every man who passed her way. Her laughter was music, her long dark hair fell like a curtain of night, and her smile drew people to her like moths to flame. But Maria's heart longed for more than admiration. She dreamed of wealth, of fine clothes, of a man who could carry her into a life of ease. And one day, her dreams seemed to come true. A nobleman rode into her village, rich and handsome, astride a proud stallion. He saw her, and she saw him, and in that instant a spark caught fire. Their courtship was swift, intoxicating. Against the warnings of her family, Maria gave her heart to him. They married, and she bore him children. 2, sometimes 3, depending on who tells the story. For a while, she lived in bliss, raising her children in a home finer than she had ever known, cherished and adored. But as the years passed, her noble husband grew restless. He tired of village life, tired of Maria's demands, and most of all, tired of being tied to her by the children. His visits grew fewer, his affections cooled, and whispers began that he sought the company of another woman of equal wealth and standing. Maria, still young, still proud, felt her heart blacken with jealousy. The breaking point came one evening. She walked with her children by the river when a carriage rolled by, and within it sat her husband, laughing, smiling, beside a woman dressed in finery more splendid than any Maria had ever worn. He did not even glance at her, nor at their children. His laughter cut her like a blade, and in that moment, they say, Maria snapped. Her sorrow boiled into rage, her jealousy into madness. She turned on her children, who clung to her skirts, innocent and bewildered. In a frenzy of despair, she dragged them into the rushing river and held them beneath the water until their small bodies grew still. The spell of fury broke, and horror replaced it. She looked down into the black river, where their pale faces disappeared into the current, and a scream tore from her lips. She threw herself after them, letting the cold water close over her head. When dawn came, villagers found her body on the riverbank. The children were gone, buried in shallow graves, or perhaps taken by the current. No one knows for certain. But Maria's soul did not rest. From that day forward, people began to hear her. A woman's cry on the night wind, wailing for her children. Pale glimpses of her figure gliding along the river's edge, dressed in a long white gown, dripping with sorrow. The weeping woman, La Llorona. Some say she searches still, forever doomed to wander earth and water, seeking her lost children. Others say she is cursed to steal the children of others, dragging them to the depths as punishment for her crime. Her voice has been heard for generations, I mis hijos, echoing from stream to stream, warning to keep children home at night, away from the dark water. But there is more to her than a tale told to frighten. Beneath the simple story lies a web of history, culture, and shadow, tales older than Maria herself. Some scholars whisper that her legend may reach back to the time of the Aztecs, when another weeping mother walked the night, crying for her doomed children before the conquest came. But whether goddess or ghost, La Llorona lingers, and tonight we walk beside her through centuries of sorrow, superstition, and chilling encounters. Listen closely, for the night is long, and her cry may rise at any moment. The story of La Llorona, though wrapped in colonial Spanish whispers, carries threads that stretch back to a much older world. Long before Maria's name was spoken, before European carriages rolled through the Americas, the Aztec people told of another woman who walked the night weeping for her children. Her name was Cihuacóatl, the Serpent Woman. She was not mortal, but divine, a goddess who embodied motherhood and sorrow, protector of women who died in childbirth, and a figure both revered and feared. The Aztecs carved her likeness in stone, a fierce woman holding a cradle or bearing a serpent. Yet, her most haunting aspect was the way she roamed at night, appearing at crossroads and riversides, wailing in grief. They say she cried for her children, her voice piercing the silence of Tenochtitlan. My children, we are about to go away forever. Her lament was seen as an omen of tragedy, a warning of what was to come. And soon enough, tragedy did come, the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors, bringing steel, fire, and disease. The Aztecs, who had once ruled the Valley of Mexico with great temples and armies, fell beneath the weight of conquest. To many, Cihuacóatl's cries had been prophecy. She had wept for the fate of her people, the loss of her children, an empire doomed to vanish. And so, as centuries passed, her memory blended with new stories. When colonists brought their own tales of restless spirits, when Maria's tragic drowning entered village folklore, the two threads tangled. The goddess became the ghost, the prophecy became the punishment, and the ancient voice of Cihuacóatl lived on as La Llorona. Even today, in some versions of the story, elders say La Llorona does not merely seek her lost children. She mourns for all children, lost to conquest, war, and misfortune. She is not only Maria, but a mother of nations, cursed to walk endlessly, unable to save what was taken. Picture, for a moment, the great city of Tenochtitlan as it once was, wide canals reflecting torchlight, stone temples rising like mountains, and the hum of life filling the air. Now imagine the night, when shadows deepened and the goddess' cry rang out across the waters. Imagine lying awake in your reed hut, hearing a woman's voice calling, trembling with despair, "My children, where shall I take you?" You would pull your blankets tighter, whisper prayers, and wonder what doom was drawing near. This vision survived conquest, preserved in hushed retellings, and it merged seamlessly with the colonial story of Maria. Both women wept, both wandered riversides, both warned of loss. Over time, the lines blurred, until La Llorona became a figure as old as time itself, wearing many faces but always carrying the same cry. "Ay, mis hijos." Some scholars suggest that this blending of cultures is what gives La Llorona her enduring power. She is both indigenous and colonial, ancient and modern, a bridge between worlds. In her sobbing voice are centuries of grief, stretching from goddesses of the old world to mothers of today. And yet, she is not just myth. Her presence lingers in testimonies that are startlingly vivid, told not by priests or chroniclers, but by villagers, travelers, and families who swear they have heard her themselves. When the Spaniards first set foot on the shores of the New World, They carried more than weapons and ships. They brought their own beliefs in saints and spirits, tales of wailing women and restless souls. Yet soon, even they could not ignore the strange voices that seemed to drift through the night in this land so far from home. Chroniclers of the conquest, men who recorded each omen with quill and ink, noted unsettling reports. Soldiers and priests alike wrote of nights when, through the still air of the Valley of Mexico, came the sound of a woman crying. Her voice was described as mournful, drawn out, as though torn from the deepest sorrow. To the Spanish, it was unnerving. To the native people, it was familiar, echoing the goddess Cihuacóatl's prophecy. Some records describe a pale woman in white gliding along the canals of the new city, her face hidden beneath a veil, her long hair falling damp across her gown. They said she drifted near the water, wringing her hands, crying into the night. The Spanish whispered she was a lost soul, trapped between worlds. The natives whispered something darker, that she was no stranger, but the same voice that had warned of their empire's fall. And so La Llorona began to take her shape, part ghost, part goddess, part memory of sorrow. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the story was woven into everyday life. Families in villages across Mexico spoke of hearing her at night. Mothers would hush children with warnings. Stay inside. Do not wander to the river after dark, for La Llorona is there, searching for little ones to take as her own. Some claimed to see her floating near waterways, a white dress glowing faintly, her head bowed, her cries carrying in the wind. Others swore they felt her presence, an icy chill sweeping over the skin, a heaviness in the chest, followed by the unmistakable sound of a woman weeping. There are testimonies of travelers who, crossing lonely paths at midnight, heard footsteps behind them and turned to find no one there. Only the soft sob of a woman, so close it seemed she might be standing at their shoulder. They would hurry their steps, whisper prayers, but the sound followed, fading only when they reached the safety of their home. In villages near Oaxaca, people spoke of nights when the dogs would howl and the chickens grow restless. Farmers would step outside, lantern in hand, and see a figure moving along the stream. A tall, thin woman dressed in white, her face shadowed. When they called out, she vanished like mist, leaving only the echo of her cry. Others told of hearing her voice so near it seemed she was inside their very home. Parents swore that her weeping came from beside the cradle, though when they rushed to check, their children slept soundly. Still, they would cross themselves and whisper, "La Llorona has passed here tonight." And yet, not all encounters were so harmless. Stories spread of children who disappeared near rivers, their last cries mingling with the sound of rushing water. Some villagers insisted these were accidents, tragedies of the current. But others believed the weeping woman had taken them, still searching for the children she drowned long ago. For the people, she was not only a story, but a presence. She lived at the edge of every riverbank, in every shadowed street where water pooled after the rain. She was both warning and mystery, a mother's grief transformed into a ghost who could not rest. And so, generation after generation, the tale passed down. From grandmother to child, from campfire to bedside, her cry was kept alive. Always the same lament, always the same shiver in the air. Ay mis hijos. Through time, the story spread beyond Mexico's borders, carried into the deserts and villages of New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, and California. La Llorona became not only the ghost of a single river, but a legend who drifted with the people, following them wherever water flowed. Even now, in the modern world of highways and streetlights, there are those who swear they have seen her. A pale figure at the roadside, asking for a ride, only to vanish from the car without a sound. A voice calling near bridges in the dead of night. A woman in white, walking endlessly, her face streaked with tears. But these are the modern testimonies, the urban legends. For now, we linger still in the old world, when firelight flickered in clay homes, and the night air seemed to carry voices not of the living, but of the dead. Listen closely, for she may pass by at any moment. In the quiet of a village night, the air is rarely still. Dogs bark at shadows, owls call from the trees, and the river forever murmurs. But when the cries of La Llorona rise above these sounds, the world seems to hold its breath. There are countless stories told by families who swear they have heard her, seen her, even felt the sweep of her presence as she passed. One old tale comes from a village in central Mexico, where a farmer returned late one evening, lantern swinging by his side. As he neared the footbridge across the river, he heard sobbing, soft at first, like a woman weeping into her hands. He called out, asking if she needed help, but the sound only grew louder, sharper, echoing all around him. When he lifted his lantern, he saw her, a woman in white, her hair long and dripping, her face hidden in shadow. She stood upon the water itself, the current flowing through her as if she was smoke. The farmer froze. His lantern shook in his hand. And then she raised her head. Her face was pale, hollow, with eyes as dark as the depths. A cry tore from her throat. Mis hijos. So, piercing that the farmer dropped his lantern and fled, never daring to cross the river at night again. Another tale, whispered among children in New Mexico, tells of two brothers who ignored their mother's warnings and went fishing after dark. They set their lines into the water, laughing softly, until they heard footsteps behind them. Turning, they saw a tall woman, veiled, gliding silently across the bank. She lifted her hands, and her voice broke the night with weeping so sorrowful it chilled them to the bone. The brothers dropped their lines and ran, stumbling home. The next morning, their fishing rods were found snapped in half, as though by unseen hands. In Texas, families near the Rio Grande spoke of summer nights when the wind would shift, carrying her cries across the desert. Ranchers claimed to see her by the water, her gown bright against the moonlit current, her voice cutting through the silence. One man told of riding his horse along the riverbank when the animal reared, eyes wild with fear. He followed its gaze and saw her, hovering just above the ground, drifting toward the water, her sobs rising and falling like the tide. By the time he calmed his horse, she was gone. Even in modern times, travelers speak of strange encounters. A young couple, driving home late from a dance, swore they picked up a woman in white standing by the roadside. She entered the back seat without a word, her head bowed, her long dark hair veiling her face. The car grew cold, the radio crackled, and when the driver glanced in the mirror, she was gone. Only the faint echo of weeping lingered in the car. These stories, though scattered across regions and centuries, all share the same haunting details. The pale woman, the river's edge, the cry for her children. Always searching, always weeping, always near water. And yet, in some versions, her sorrow twists into danger. She is not only a mourner, but a taker. Parents tell their children not to stray too close to rivers after dark, for La Llorona waits there, her long arms reaching to pull the curious down beneath the current. Boys walking home alone, men who wander the streets too late, even children tucked safely in bed. No one is beyond her reach if she chooses to visit. But whether she is guardian, warning, or predator, one truth remains: her voice never fades. The rivers carry it, the winds lift it, and the people keep it alive in their telling. Across Mexico, the American Southwest, and into Central and South America, Her legend shifts but never dies. Sometimes she is Maria, the betrayed wife. Sometimes she is the goddess Cihuacóatl reborn. Sometimes she is simply a nameless woman of white, forever tied to the water. And always she is weeping. Ay, mis hijos. The cry drifts through generations, a mother's grief transformed into something more than human. A presence that lingers at the edges of night, just beyond the circle of firelight, where water moves dark and unseen. Though her story is centuries old, La Llorona has not faded into the past. If anything, she lingers closer than ever, her cry carried into the modern age. Even in a world of headlights, highways, and neon lights, her voice is still heard in the dark. Paranormal investigators in Mexico City tell of late-night recordings near canals and bridges. They set up their devices expecting silence, only to capture the faint sound of weeping, low, mournful, as though a woman knelt at the water's edge, forever grieving. On playback, the cries rise and fall, chilling even the most skeptical listener. Some investigators claim the recordings carry words, mis hijos, whispered through static, unmistakable. In Albuquerque, New Mexico residents report hearing her cry near the Rio Grande. Families who live along the water say they have been woken at night by a sound so sorrowful, so human, that it cannot be dismissed. One mother describes sitting up in bed, clutching her child, certain that someone stood outside her window. Yet when she looked, the street was empty, the night still, except for the fading echo of weeping drifting downriver. Drivers on lonely highways tell of roadside encounters. A woman in white standing in the shadows, her hand raised for a ride. Some pull over, some pass by, but always, when the brave stop to look closer, she is gone. A shimmer, a mist, a sob carried on the wind. In San Antonio, Texas, a group of teenagers, sneaking out after dark, claimed to see her by the waterway that winds through the city. They said she glided along the bank, her gown brushing the ground, though her feet never touched it. She lifted her face toward them, and though they could not see her eyes, they felt her gaze pierce through them, heavy with despair. One boy swore that her voice called his name, low and trembling. They ran, breathless, never returning to that spot. Ghost hunters, armed with cameras and recorders, seek her in graveyards, riversides, and abandoned towns. Some return with flickers of light across their footage, strange distortions, unexplained cold spots. Others admit that when her cry rises in the night, all their courage drains away. No device can protect them from the weight of her grief. But La Llorona is not only a ghost in whispered testimony. She has become part of culture itself. Festivals in Mexico honor her with candlelit processions, actors dressed in white drifting along canals, their voices echoing her eternal cry. In these reenactments, families gather on the banks, children watching with wide eyes as the weeping woman emerges from the mist, her sobs carrying across the water. She is both warning and wonder, fear and fascination. Films, songs, and plays carry her legend into modern art. From horror cinema to lullabies, she appears again and again, a symbol of grief that cannot be silenced. Some see her as punishment, others as prophecy, but all agree that her story reaches deep into the human heart where love and loss meet. And still, the stories continue. Families in Los Angeles, Houston, El Paso, Guatemala, Colombia, each has its version, its warning, its sighting. She is not bound to one river, nor to one time. Wherever water flows in darkness, wherever sorrow lingers, she may be heard, always the same cry, always the same despair. Mis hijos. Even now, you may wonder. If you step outside tonight, if you walk alone by the riverbank, would you hear her? Would you see the white gown among the reeds, the bowed head, the trembling shoulders? Or would you hear only the wind? Perhaps you would pass by untouched. Or perhaps, just perhaps, her voice would rise, calling not only for her lost children, but for you. Through centuries, La Llorona has been many things. A mother broken by sorrow, a spirit cursed for her crime, a goddess warning of conquest, a ghost that drifts from river to river, generation to generation. Her cry is grief made eternal, sorrow turned to sound. For some, she is punishment, a reminder of what jealousy and rage can do when left unchecked. For others, she is a guardian, her story told to keep children safe from dark waters and dangerous paths. And for many, she is a voice that belongs not only to Maria or to one goddess, but to all who have lost, all who have mourned. Perhaps that is why she endures. Because in her wail, we hear echoes of every broken heart, every mother who has grieved, every life touched by sorrow. La Llorona is not only a tale to frighten children, or a ghost to haunt the night. She is a reflection of the deepest part of being human, the fear of loss, the pain of regret, the longing for what can never return. And so, she walks still. Along rivers and canals, across deserts and cities, her gown white as the moon, her hair heavy with mist, always weeping, always searching, always calling, "Ay, mis hijos." The sound fades into the night, sometimes close, sometimes impossibly far. Some will hear it and shiver. Some will turn away. And some, listening closely, will understand that hers is not just the voice of a ghost, but the echo of love carried too far into despair. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine the river outside your window. Dark water, steady and calm, the world hushed, and far away, across the current, a woman walks, her figure dim in the mist. She does not come near, not tonight. She only moves along the bank, her voice rising, trembling, and fading again into silence. Rest now. The story is told, the night grows still, and the weeping has passed. Close your eyes. Open your mind. Sleep well.